the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today is International Women's Day when I'm recording this. I'm on my way home from work. So as today is International Women's Day when I'm recording it, hopefully you'll have already seen my interviews from the weekend where I had the pleasure of meeting some of the most interesting, amazing, inspiring women at the International Women's Day car meet that I organised. And I kind of wanted to reflect a little bit here on the podcast myself about the running of the meet, the kind of putting the meet on, how I went about that, kind of my thought processes before that, so that I've got something to look back on, and also in the hope that it inspires some other people to think about how they interact with women at events and at car shows and meets and things like that going forward in a different way. So starting off really with the kind of thought processes behind what led to one of the most exciting days, I think, of my calendar so far. Back in January, I had started my search yet again, as I had done in the previous year or so, COVID, etc. Regardless, looking for an event that was being put on for International Women's Day. It seemed like something that should exist in an area where women have excelled in terms of automotive sport, but also had to struggle to try and get back into kind of equality and equal footing in the way that they're treated. And honestly, I was repeatedly surprised every time I did my searches that there was nothing. So towards the end of January, I thought about the idea of putting an event on myself, and I did what I always do when I have one of these ideas, and run it past Jamie. He's an absolute godsend in that regard, because he's quite sensible thinking, and sometimes I come up with ideas about doing things and putting events on and going to places, and he goes, no, come on, that's not necessarily a good idea. And so he's very good like that. And it was hugely reassuring when he said, no, actually, I think that's a great idea and definitely something other people might be interested in going along to, and I think you can definitely do it, which is always lovely to hear, and it's so nice to have a partner who's so supportive of me when I come up with these ideas, when they're the right sort of thing to do. So once I'd checked my own sanity, it was then to kind of go to Twitter and see what the sanity of other women on Twitter was like, as to whether they'd be interested in attending this sort of event. So I think it was on the 27th of January, I put out a tweet, something along the lines of, very tentatively, if I was to organise a International Women's Day car meet the Sunday before, so Sunday the 5th of May, would people be interested in coming along? And I tagged a few ladies that I knew, and I saw them tag a few more people as they saw the tweet, and it spiraled into generally a very positive response. It was hugely reassuring to see, and I was absolutely thrilled that people were quite keen to get together and celebrate International Women's Day, celebrate the achievements as women that we have managed to do within the automotive world, and also just kind of find a safe space for women and girls within automotive to kind of thrive and meet each other. So it was then a case of finding a venue, and I think I panicked a little bit about this. I'd got a few ideas about where I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be reasonably well accessible for everyone. I wanted it to be kind of central enough that people from across the country were able to get to it. It was lots of the sorts of things that I actually end up thinking about when I'm trying to put on a Morris Minor Young Owners event. But also I wanted it to be somewhere that was going to offer teas and coffees and things like that. and just generally be welcoming to the idea of hosting a women's event. I also wanted it to have some sort of connection to women in history kind of stepping out and doing exceptional work. And I tried a few places, and even way back in January, some of these places that I was asking about were fully booked or were kind of unsure about the viability of it. But I got in contact with Sywell Aerodrome, and they were hugely supportive about it and were able to say, yeah, absolutely, you can bring a group along. We're probably going to have to limit it to around 30 cars for the size of the kind of car park that we've got and things. But absolutely, this should be something that we can do. And if you know anything about Sywell, there's a real rich history there of women in aviation. The only woman to fly and own a Spitfire flew out of there, so it's a great location in terms of that. So it really suited our needs, and turned out to be pretty popular in terms of people being able to get to it and find a way of coming along to the event. So once I'd got a location sorted, it was then time to kind of put out some of the social media posts and stuff that I'd drawn up about it, and see if people were actually going to be able to come along to this event and take part. So I had done a load of themed designed stuff on Canva, which is honestly my best friend for doing this sort of thing. And also created up an Eventbrite link so that I could kind of get an idea of how many people were coming, how much interest there was, and also keep it kind of below that 30 car limit that we had. And it was so thrilling that within like the first 24 hours we reached kind of the halfway point really in the sales. It was so exciting to see so many people so keen to come along and take part. And when I say sales, I mean the tickets were free. Coming along and taking a part was not costed, but it's referred to as sales on the Eventbrite app. And yeah, it was so exciting, and also really exciting to see so many people tweeting about being excited to attend, and telling people that they'd got their ticket to come along to the event. Now, given that had obviously gone so smoothly, I decided that I obviously needed a little bit more of a challenge, and I wanted this really to be an event that people would remember and look back on with fondness. So I thought about getting a few little bits of merch. I put a poll out asking about whether people would be interested in stickers, rally plaques, or both. Stickers were more popular, but personally I love a rally plaque. So it was then a case of, okay, well, we'll definitely get quite a few stickers, and then we'll see if we can find somewhere that will do a very small run of rally plaques so that there's a couple available, and it means that it's quite easy to break even in terms of the sales of those, and we might even be able to make a bit of profit to be able to donate back to a women's charity. So I managed to find somewhere to do car stickers, and I managed to find somewhere that was able to do a run of just 10 rally plaques, meaning that those that were interested could get one, but I wasn't going to be ending up with like 50 or 60 left over, because there was no way we were going to get that many cars to Sywell. So that went really well. Got those. The rally packs panicked me a little bit because the time that they take to produce is obviously a little bit longer than stickers, and so they didn't arrive until literally the week before. But they got there, it was all good, and I had everything. And in the that week run up, I was able to post pictures of the stickers and the rally plaques, and people were posting pictures of getting their cars ready, getting themselves sorted for some people what was a pretty big trip. And it was just so exciting to see people really looking forward, well, women really looking forward to going to an event and getting ready. Now in that week run up, there was also a few questions that were popping up on social media about the event, and I was trying to keep on top of them, but it was also somewhat difficult to make sure that I'd seen everything when they were possibly buried down in the bottom of threads and threads and threads, and I wasn't always tagged in them or whatever. So I took a few of the most popular questions and a bit more information and things like that, and compiled a little kind of pre-event email that went out to all the women who had ordered tickets, taking the email addresses from the Eventbrite, making sure that they were all kept secret with blind CCs and things, so that no GDPR issues and all that sort of thing, and just gave them kind of a bit of reassurance about what was going to happen, what the day was going to run like, what they could expect from the day, and just also a nice little reminder really that what it was about, making sure that everyone was kind of going to be able to feel safe and happy and included when they arrived. And I think that was quite well appreciated by people. Most people saw it, I think, but I appreciate that it might have gone to spam for a few people. So I'm going to look into, if I run this again or a similar event again, whether there's a way on the confirmation email that goes to Eventbrite to include some information and to let them know to look out for an email turning up at some point. So then we get to the day of, and I've packed everything in the car. I've collected my little sister Steph, who's coming with me, and we set off from from my house at around, I think, 8:30, and head our way down there. And I quite happily sat in the Aviator Aerodrome car park at about 9:45. The event is starting at 10:30, but I wanted to make sure that I was there before anybody else to kind of reassure people that they were in the right place, and just welcome them to the event. The first arrivals came not long after that. Kim and her husband Pete had been staying in the Aviator next hotel on site as they'd come down from Teesside. So Kim in her Saxo was the first to arrive, and then from there it was a pretty steady flow of everybody else turning up. So in no particular order, in attendance we had Kaz in her Daihatsu, which had taken part the week before in the Fuel Power 1,000-mile challenge in a £1,000 car that is less than £1,000 cc, 1,000 cc, raising £1,000 for Crohn's. So she came along in that, obviously taking a huge liking to it, and it must be really comfortable to want to take it out again the following weekend. We had Genevieve and her mum Audrey, who had come along in her gorgeous orange and black Fiat 500. Genevieve is also from the Fuel Power channel that she runs with her boyfriend. Then we had Holly and her mum Lee. Holly you know from this channel because I interviewed her about her Clio RS back in like October, November time. That went up on the channel. So Lady was there with Holly and her mum. Then we had Sammy and Chloe there in Mildred the Mondeo, a pretty well-known Mondeo from Weird Car Twitter, and they'd come all the way up from Southampton in that Mondeo. But as we all kind of looked around it, we did realise that it was a pretty lush and plush example. So they drove up in armchairs essentially. Then of course we had Steph from iDriver Classic and Carly from Miss Hubnut and Hubnut, and they came along in Steph's Proton. Carly, bless her, had taken what sounded like the most nightmarish train journey possible to get there on the day, and we're very grateful that she did. And then Steph had collected her from a nearby hotel on her way down. I think Steph had said something like 6 hours total driving for her on that day, and it's such a wonderful thing that people were willing to put in such effort to come along. Then we had Amanda, who I had the pleasure of inviting after we'd spent some time together at the Lancaster and Practical Classics Coffee with a Cause the other week, and she came along in her BMW Z3 that I'd seen there, and she's thankfully decided to keep the beautiful red roof on it. Then we had Heather, who had come from Worcester in her VW Golf R32, which was absolutely lovely, and had gone like an absolute dream all the way down for her and all the way back as well, from what I'd heard. Jessica in her gorgeous black poppy up headlights and everything Nissan 180 SX. Katie, who's better known as Wrenching Wench in Sylvester, her VW Scirocco, which proved very popular when I asked people about their favourite car at the event. Matty had hoped to come along in her newly rejuvenated midget, but unfortunately those doing the work on it hadn't taken her seriously when she said definitely need it for this weekend. So we saw her lovely modern Mini instead, but it had a great collection of stickers on the back of it, including one that stated her other vehicle being a Wolseley 1500. So they were all there in spirit. We had Scarlett in her A40 Somerset Custom that turned a lot of heads and got a lot of compliments, as it always does when it comes along, and is an absolute credit to her and her dad in terms of the styling of it. We had Selena come along in her Citroen C5 that was all stickered up and preparing for the Rust Bucket Challenge. We had Charlie Bowden, who you might know from Practical Classics and various amazing pieces of automotive journalism, and Faye, who you might know from various pieces of automotive PR, who claimed to have not come along in any car that was remarkable or worth noting, but we were really pleased to have them there taking part in the day. And Leah, who you might know from Lady Leah Classics or Driven Collective, was also able to pop by towards the end just to kind of say hello to everyone and be a little bit of part of it. So a really great turnout, all things considered, and obviously myself and my sister turned up in Peggy. Once everybody had arrived and been labelled up with sticky labels, which were a last minute thought by my parents to help put names from online spaces to faces, and these were gratefully received at the start, but they didn't remain very sticky, so we did have to get to know each other quite quickly, but we did do a pretty good job of that, I think, and the conversation was really flowing, and people were really enjoying themselves, which was a great relief for me, despite the fact that it was absolutely freezing. People were keen to stay out, looking at each other's cars, seeing the people that they kind of might vaguely know or may never have known online, and really getting to know them that little bit better. Given that there were a few of us who do a little bit of the old YouTube or podcasting and things like that, there was a few of us who took the time on the day to record some of the experiences, stories, and just day-to-day enjoyment of cars from the women that were there. And I think that was really special because it's always nice to highlight the voices of others, and I think there's been quite a few videos that have come out with that. So if you're interested in kind of hearing from some more of the women, obviously there was my podcast that came out on Tuesday, but I will link all of the others that have come out since down in the description of this video, so that you've got the opportunity to hear from a few different people as well, and hear a few different stories, because we all kind of had different questions for the people that were in attendance, and it was just nice to be able to create these memories and these kind of time capsules of how people were feeling at this first event that's been put on. As well as that, something that was really touching was the fact that two young lads from Northampton University had come along, and my sister and I had seen them arrive on a bicycle quite early on. So they'd cycled all the way from the University of Northampton because they were doing automotive journalism, and they wanted to do some of their coursework about women in automotive, and wanted to talk to some of the women that they'd seen at this event that was being advertised, and kind of record a few stories and things for their radio-based assignment, which was really lovely. And we made sure to kind of introduce them to a few of the women there so that they could get a couple of stories from them all. After videos had been recorded and discussions had been had, and a group photo that is absolutely iconic, and I will never not smile when I look at that group photo, was taken, it was gradually time for people to start heading back on their way. We drank an inordinate amount of hot drinks in a desperate hope to warm ourselves up, and really it was now getting to quite a few of us. So we headed off and started to go our separate ways, but I think we were all kind of very much vibing on that drive home with the kind of joy of what we'd experienced. So in terms of kind of a personal reflection, I was so pleased that everyone really enjoyed their day, really enjoyed meeting each other and spending time with each other, and it was so much more than I think even I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be just nice to have something to mark the day, but it really became quite apparent talking to people that the opportunity to come to an event where there was no doubt in anybody's mind who the car belonged to, who was there for the reasons of their interest in cars, and the fact that they could talk so freely and so unabashedly about their passion for their vehicles, and not feel kind of any judgment and things like that. That was really something that I think a lot of us didn't realise until it was there, how valuable that could be to women in the automotive scene. And it made it feel very special, as something really nice to have been part of, and something that I don't think realistically I could ever leave as being a one-off or a once a year sort of thing. So there are discussions in my head and with a few other people at the moment about the possibility of setting up something that is there all the time, that is a safe space online for women in the automotive area to discuss what issues they've had at garages, discussions that they've had that have made them feel a little bit awkward and unsafe, seek out areas and in restorations and things like that that they know they're going to get the kind of support and just general treatment that speaks of embracing equality, which is what International Women's Day this year is all about. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that I think Kim said to me, look, if we don't have another one of these, we know where to find you. So I really hope you do another one. So we're going to find some more locations, hopefully, that will be able to offer the same sort of accessibility to people, but also the same sort of quality of safe space to people. And of course, if we do create some sort of online space, then we can safely advertise that in a way that means we aren't going to come under negative comments or scrutiny, but I would like to say how really positive it was that not only did we not receive negative comments really online when we were discussing the happening of it, we haven't received really any since, and it's also been really lovely that those who have engaged with it from a male perspective have actually been so supportive and understanding about this sort of space that offers something different. We're not saying that events like this would ever replace your regular sort of cars and coffee event, or that they would offer something to replace a regular car show, because those are equally important within our yearly calendars, no doubt. But it offers something different that I think will definitely help enrich and add value to the classic car scene, and I hope people continue to see that. So I really hope you've enjoyed listening to kind of some of my reflections and thought processes on it from my perspective of running this, and that if you are a woman who's listening to this podcast and you are interested in attending one of a future event or something like this, or you like the sound of this sort of thing, you know that we're going to keep looking and making these sorts of spaces for us. But in the meantime, we've come really to the end of season 4. This was a little bit of a bonus extra episode to kind of wrap up the activities that I've been doing and engaging with this season. I'm going to take a little break from this typical stuff, but you might see some different stuff and trying out a few different things here on the YouTube channel or over on Instagram and things like that. So I'm not going away by any means, just taking a couple of weeks off to do some other interesting stuff and build up a few episodes ready for season 5, in which we will reach 100 episodes of the Passenger Seat podcast, which is really exciting. But in the meantime, please drive safely and happy motoring.